In the first weeks of 2026, 3 million pages of documents, 180,000 images, and 2,000 videos about Jeffrey Epstein were released by the U.S. Department of Justice. What emerged was not a story about one predator, but an entire system designed to protect power at any cost. This is the story of 10 disturbing revelations from the Epstein Files, and what they tell us about institutional failure on an unprecedented scale. In 2007, a 21-year-old woman testified before a grand jury. Her story would change everything. She was recruited at 16, told she could make $200 for a massage at Epstein's Palm Beach mansion. When Epstein tried to abuse her, she refused. He didn't punish her. Instead, he offered a different opportunity: recruit girls from her high school. For every girl, she'd make $200. She became a prolific recruiter, bringing 7 to 10 girls, mostly 16 and 18 years old, to the mansion. The recruiters told girls exactly what to say. The economics of exploitation were brutally simple: more clothes off, more touching, more money. One girl brought was just 14. When a 23-year-old was suggested, recruiters said she was too old and told not to bring her back. Girls began approaching the recruiter at school directly, asking to be included. This wasn't one predator's crime. This was industrial-scale trafficking, disguised as a job opportunity, targeting the most vulnerable, teenagers in need of money. The state investigation identified over 25 girls. The majority were minors. If Epstein was the financier, Ghislaine Maxwell was something worse. She was the normalizer. FBI testimony revealed,
Maxwell positioned herself to victims as a cool older sister. She told teenage girls, "This is what grown-ups do." After Epstein sexually abused a 14-year-old during her first visit, Maxwell called the girl and said, "Aren't you a clever girl?" Jeffrey was very impressed.
Praise after abuse, a calculated psychological tactic. It reframed trauma as achievement, exploitation as sophistication.
Maxwell's manipulation evolved. When one victim turned 18, Maxwell gave her a schoolgirl outfit. "Well," Maxwell said, "I thought it would be adorable if you gave Jeffrey his tea in this."
The victim felt compelled to comply. Epstein slapped her. The victim broke down in tears during her FBI interview, recounting the incident. Maxwell coordinated the entire operation, scheduling appointments, managing victim transport, maintaining control from just outside massage rooms in Palm Beach, New York, New Mexico, and London. Today, Maxwell sits in prison serving 20 years. She still denies everything. Finding. There 4, the 1996 report that changed nothing, September 1996. A handwritten FBI complaint. An artist reported that Jeffrey Epstein had stolen photographs of her 12 and 16-year-old sisters. She said Epstein had sold the pictures. She said he threatened to burn her house down if she told anyone. The FBI categorized it as child pornography. Then, nothing happened. The woman making the complaint is believed to be Maria Farmer. For 30 years, she said she reported Epstein to police and the FBI. No one listened.
When the file was finally released in 2025, Farmer cried. She said, "I'm crying for 2 reasons. Tears of joy for myself, but tears of sorrow for all the other victims that the FBI failed."
Think about this timeline. 1996, FBI receives complaint about stolen photos of children. 2005, Epstein arrested after Palm Beach investigation. 2008, Epstein given a sweetheart deal. 2019, Epstein arrested again, dies in custody. In those 23 years between Farmer's complaint and Epstein's 2019 arrest, dozens more girls were victimized. If the FBI had acted in 1996, Epstein might have been stopped before he could assault hundreds more. Instead, the system failed, and it would fail again. Finding number 5. The 2008 sweetheart deal. That shut it all down by 2007, federal prosecutors had assembled something they believed was airtight. A 60-count federal indictment, sex trafficking charges, evidence, testimony from dozens of victims. This case could have sent Epstein to prison for life. Then U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta made it disappear. On September 24, 2007, one day before the indictment was set to be filed, Epstein signed a non-prosecution agreement. What did he get? 2 state prostitution charges, 13 months in county jail, work release privileges, meaning he could leave during the day. What did he give? A confession, and immunity for his unnamed co-conspirators. Let that sink in. Not just Epstein, but others involved in his trafficking network received blanket federal immunity. An email from Epstein's lawyer to Acosta afterward was revealing. You assured me that your office would not contact any identified individuals, potential witnesses, or civil claimants. Translation: you promised to shut down the investigation, and Acosta delivered. The deal violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act. It cut off an FBI investigation into other powerful people. It sealed the indictment, preventing public scrutiny. In 2020, the Department of Justice investigated Acosta and found he used poor judgment, but cleared him of corruption. Yet even that report called it troubling that the investigation was shut down while still incomplete. The deal accomplished one thing perfectly. It gave Epstein 11 more years of operation. 11 more years to cultivate relationships with scientists, financiers, and tech billionaires. Finding the Bursex, Elon Musk, and the island visits. The emails were shocking. Between 2012 and 2014, Elon Musk, now the world's richest person, exchanged detailed correspondence with Jeffrey Epstein about visiting his private island in the Virgin Islands.
Epstein, if you find some time, come visit me on my island in the Caribbean. I'll be there most of Nav and Deck. Musk, sounds good. We'll try to make it.
Musk mentioned he and his wife would be in the Caribbean. Epstein offered helicopter transportation. Musk, what's a good time to come over between December 23rd and 30? Epstein, probably after Christmas. Glad you are coming. Musk, let's aim for December 28th, 29 or 30. Looking forward to it. In December 2012, Musk wrote, "Do you have any parties planned? I want to hit the party scene. Let loose."
Not a peaceful island experience, but parties. In 2013, the pattern repeated. Epstein mentioned Woody Allen would be there. Musk said, yes. Calendar entries show Elon Musk to Island Deck 6. Is this still happening? Whether Musk ultimately visited remains unclear. Plans were canceled. But one thing is certain. For 2 years, one of the world's most powerful men actively planned to visit the site where, according to federal prosecutors, many of Epstein's crimes occurred. Musk has denied ever visiting, but the emails raise serious questions about proximity and judgment. Finding: Juror 7, J.P. Morgan Chase, the bank that enabled it all. A sex trafficking operation requires infrastructure, private planes, properties, bank accounts. For 15 years, from 1998 to 2013, J.P. Morgan Chase was that infrastructure. A senior executive, Jess Staley, became Epstein's close friend. They exchanged over 200 emails, references to Disney princesses, island visits. Even after Epstein's 2008 conviction, J.P. Morgan kept him as a client. In June 2023, J.P. Morgan paid $290 million to settle with Epstein's victims, calling themselves the financial conduit for his trafficking operation. 3 months later, another $75 million settlement with the U.S. Virgin Islands. J.P. Morgan didn't admit wrongdoing, but they understood. The bank had looked away for 15 years, even after Epstein was convicted. The settlements totaled $365 million, the largest financial accountability imposed on any institution that enabled Epstein. But money is not justice. Staley left J.P. Morgan in 2013 and became CEO of Barclays. He later resigned amid scrutiny of his Epstein ties. In June 2025, he lost a tribunal case that tried to reinstate his job. The lesson is clear. Institutional blindness, sustained across years and multiple administrations, enabled a predator to operate openly. Finding number 8, Little St. James, the island of crimes and cover-ups. Little St. James, a 70-acre island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, purchased in 1998 for $8 million. It became known as Pedophile Island after Epstein's crimes became public. In November 2022, the U.S. Virgin Islands reached a $105 million settlement with Epstein's estate, the largest in the territory's history. But there was more. Epstein had fraudulently obtained $80 million in tax benefits by using a shell company called Southern Trust. He claimed to operate a legitimate business with local employees. In reality, those employees worked on his trafficking operation. Epstein purchased a second island, Great St. James, for $18 million in 2016. The government found something disturbing. Epstein had demolished centuries-old structures, historical ruins of enslaved workers, to make room for his development. He literally erased historical suffering to build his compound. Under the settlement, both islands were sold to independent parties. The proceeds went to victims and the territory. But the island itself tells a story, a remote location, private planes, helicopters, boats bringing underage girls to a location designed to evade law enforcement. It was the epicenter of Epstein's trafficking operation, and it remained in his hands for 24 years. Ending number 9. The Baby Ranch, Eugenics and Scientific Delusion. In the early 2000s, Jeffrey Epstein confided something deeply disturbing to elite scientists. He wanted to seed the human race with his DNA. His plan: impregnate 20 women at a time at his 10,000-acre New Mexico ranch called Zorro Ranch. A NASA scientist told virtual reality pioneer Jaron Lanier that Epstein had based the plan on the Repository for Germinal Choice, a controversial sperm bank created to preserve the genetic material of Nobel laureates. Epstein discussed the scheme openly, at dinners in his Manhattan mansion, at conferences in the Virgin Islands, with scientists at Harvard and MIT. Harvard cognitive psychologist Steven Pinker attended Epstein's salons. Pinker called Epstein an intellectual imposter, but engaged with him on scientific questions. After Pinker disagreed with Epstein about genetics and human population, he was told he'd been voted off the island and was no longer welcome. Epstein funded these ideas. In 2011, a charity he established gave $20,000 to the Worldwide Transhumanist Association, an organization promoting genetic engineering and human improvement. Epstein's vision was rooted in eugenics, the discredited ideology of improving the human race through controlled breeding. It was what Nazis used to justify genocide. When Epstein was arrested in 2019, elite scientists apologized. MIT Media Lab director Joy Ito resigned. Geneticist George Church issued a public apology. But they had already given him legitimacy. They had already accepted his money. The scheme may never have materialized. But the ideology was real, and academia had endorsed it. Finding. Number 10. Bill Gates and the meetings after conviction. Between 2011 and 2014, Bill Gates met with Jeffrey Epstein multiple times. These meetings occurred years after Epstein's 2008 conviction was public knowledge. Gates flew on Epstein's plane, visited his mansion, stayed late into the night at dinners. Gates later said he hoped Epstein would help nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize.
I did not like that he had meetings with Jeffrey Epstein.
But he continued. More disturbing still. A draft email from Epstein included in the 2026 file release alleged that Bill Gates had engaged in an extramarital affair. The email demonstrates Epstein's pattern, collecting compromising information about powerful men. Gates later explained his meetings as motivated by the hope that Epstein could mobilize billions for global health philanthropy. When that didn't materialize, Gates said the relationship ended. Bill Gates has not been accused of wrongdoing. There is no evidence he knew about Epstein's trafficking crimes, but the documented relationship reveals something important. Wealthy, powerful men were willing to overlook a sex offender's conviction if it served their interests. Epstein leveraged wealth and status to maintain access to the elite, even after conviction, and they granted him that access. Finding Choose 11. The redaction scandal. What the government is still hiding. This brings us to the most disturbing finding of all. Not what the files reveal, but what they conceal. In November 2025, President Trump signed the Epstein Files Transparency Act into law. It received overwhelming bipartisan support. The deadline was clear: December 19, 2025. The DOJ released 3 million pages, but that's only half of the 6 million pages identified. What's redacted? 550 pages completely blacked out. A 119-page grand jury transcript, entirely black-boxed. 255 additional pages of consecutive redactions. 180 more pages scattered throughout. And here's what's shocking: 15 files disappeared entirely from the DOJ website within 24 hours of release. One vanished file showed a photograph of President Trump alongside Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. It was available Friday, gone by Saturday. Other missing files contain photos of massage rooms and nude paintings. Senators demanded answers. Representatives Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, the bipartisan sponsors of the transparency law, both said the DOJ failed to comply. Khanna warned officials could face contempt charges, impeachment, or prosecution referrals. Investigators discovered faulty redaction techniques allowed recovery of hidden content. Blacked-out information was accidentally revealed, then circulated online before the DOJ could correct it.
Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said the redactions were required by law. But critics point out the law explicitly required explanations for every redaction.
Who are we protecting? Are we protecting survivors? Or are we protecting these elite men that need to be out there?
The files reveal that Jeffrey Epstein was not an isolated predator. He was enabled at every level. The FBI ignored a 1996 complaint. Federal prosecutors granted immunity to co-conspirators in 2008. J.P. Morgan provided banking services for 15 years. Elite universities accepted millions in donations. Tech billionaires corresponded warmly with him. Scientists gave him legitimacy. Ghislaine Maxwell sits in prison. Epstein is dead, but the network that enabled them, the banks, the universities, the governments, remains intact. The Epstein files don't just tell us about a predator, they reveal a system designed to protect power at the expense of the powerless. The survivors still wait for answers, for justice, for the unredacted truth they were promised. As the files themselves make clear, Jeffrey Epstein was not an aberration. He was a product of the systems that protect him.